On today's show, the San Diego Padres win their first game against the Marlins like they always do, or at least most of the time do, thanks to the 4 horsemen out of the pen, plus some trade deadline talk and a player who's been in a slump.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, July 22nd. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been doing this show covering this team for 6 years now, not for just this podcast though, but also various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. Welcome everyone in to this here podcast. You can follow me on Twitter/X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, Javiipeno. I've been a little bit quiet on there, admittedly. I have been. Long story. I mean, not a long story. This is what happens when you're a little bit in a rut. What can I say? But you can go follow me out on there with any questions, comments, or concerns you have, like some people did. And we will actually respond to some of those questions and comments on today's show, but not before talking about the game recap. And then we're going to talk about Gavin Sheets being in a slump, Nick Pivetta being a Cy Young candidate, and a whole lot more. We have no time to waste. Let's get to it. But let me tell you, not much in the game recap for today's episode, guys. Let me tell you. The Padres win by a score of 2-1 over the Miami Marlins, and it was a little bit of a nail-biter. We had some moments. Firstly, Randy Vasquez, he can't keep getting away with it. Man, this was as Randy Vasquez as possible, man. 4 1/3 in this game, gives up only 1 earned run. It was to Kyle Stowers, who, by the way, hit this ball 421 feet to deep left center. I think that, just tiny little thing, I know people were complaining that Juan Soto didn't make the All-Star game. Kyle Stowers is really good, guys. Like, really, really good. And this Marlins team is not the usual bereft of any quality the way that I think we are used to them being, right? We're used to them being a disgrace to baseball. They aren't that, and Stowers is very good. So that's just a quick aside. But Randy Vasquez, 4 1/3, gives up 1 earned run. It was the Kyle Stowers home run. But hilariously enough, that's it. And he gave up 7 hits, walked a batter, struck out none. The Randy Vasquez Kansas City Chiefs devil magic continues. I don't know what he's doing, right? But at this point, it's actually funny because he doesn't go very deep into games. I think the Padres very wisely decide, let's try as few times as possible to send him out a 3rd time against the order, right? Like, don't get him overexposed. That seems to be what he does most of the time, right? And he usually, almost always, doesn't get many strikeouts, right? The last time he had more strikeouts than walks was on May 26th against who else? The Miami Marlins, guys. So I'm just saying, it's just like there's no explanation for it. He gets hit really hard, and it'll always just be a solo shot, right? Or an RBI double, and then the guys just can't seem to hit him for whatever reason. And look, with Randy, it's just really funny how, like, none of the peripherals make sense, and he's still producing, but I get it, right? With the Padres suffering so many injuries with their rotation, and in some cases their bullpen, just their overall, arms. They only just got Matt Waldron back recently. They're trying to get Brian Hoeing reincorporated with the team, right? So just so many things, and Randy's this long inning devil reliever. He's a little bit like Wandy Peralta, where he's not getting a lot of strikeouts, but he's producing poor contact. It's very surprising that it's worked as a starting pitcher. And a bullpen role is something, but as a starting pitcher role, it's incredible. But hey, I will take it. The only 2 Padres runs coming in the top of the 2nd inning. Like I said, it was a boring game. 1 from Jackson Merrill, singling in Xander Bogaerts, who goes 1 for 3 in this game, but it was a double. So shouts to Bogaerts, and Jackson Merrill does get an RBI for himself. Anything for him, I think, is huge. Anything for Bogaerts is huge. Just Bogaerts to just see that he could still have something there, right? Get the slugging points up a little bit, and then Merrill to just see some go through the hoop because we know he's good. He's just been in a rut, similar to me. Not to compare myself to a professional athlete, but he's been a little bit of a rut, but I think that he can break himself out of it. Hopefully the 2 home run game, right? Maybe that'll do something for him, and then we could also hopefully pray and cherish the possibility that he gets into the mode that he was in the second half of last season. Otherwise, for this game, got to give a shout out to the bullpen. obviously during the break we talked about this, right? During the All-Star break we talked about how dominant the bullpen has been. They are the second most in wins above replacement, at least according to Fangraphs, among bullpens, because part of that being how much they've genuinely won games. It's for a 2-1 win, right? They used Adrian Morejon, Jeremiah Estrada, Jason Adam, and Robert Suarez in this game. Only 2 hits allowed between all 4 of those guys, and what is that, like 4 2/3 innings? That's absurd. 4 strikeouts, no walks, only 2 hits. Like, just unbelievable stuff from the bullpen against, again, a decent Marlins team based on what we've seen from them lately and how they're usually viewed. So excellent stuff from them. First in ERA, they have a 3.15 as a unit right now, and the Giants are in second place at 3.20. Yeah, another reason, by the way, the Giants really are very similar to the Padres in some ways. Like, couple star players, then amazing bullpen, and hopefully some decent starting pitching. I'd say that the Padres have had more depth in their starting pitching than the Giants, but all in all, just amazing stuff, right? And considering that Yuki Matsui has been such a disaster lately, and considering that Alec Jacob, who was one of those guys heading into the year that we were hoping could maybe be a really pivotal, piece in this bullpen, he's been a disaster so far. I think he's been, by and large, in 25 innings, the worst reliever that the Padres have had this year. Crazy, right? Yeah, even worse than Yuki Matsui. Considering those guys, they've still been amazing, still in first place. I think Wandy Peralta being fine, and the emergence of David Morgan has really helped out with that, right? And in general, some decent defense, right? In total on the year, the Padres are 19th in defensive runs saved. That's not great, but they're a 10th in outs above average. They're making good big plays when they need them. They're covering a decent amount of ground. Cronenworth has it rated great on the defensive side of things, but they have a lot of big plus defenders, right? So Merrill, Tatis, Bogarts. Manny has actually rated a little bit negatively in the defensive realm. Minus defensive run saved, and minus 2 outs above average. I'm confident it'll change. Cronenworth, however, minus 5 defensive runs saved, minus 1 outs above average. One of the more surprising defensive negative players I think that the team has this year, right? The only one that really is surprising, I guess, is Manny a little bit, but the statistics to me don't match what I'm seeing as much because of the arm strength, because of the type of plays that he can make, the max possible plays he can make. And then I also think that with Cronenworth, though, the range, I think, is his thing. He hasn't had quite the level of range we've seen in the past. That's kind of the weakest part of his defensive metrics, and he hasn't just displayed it to me. And part of me is thinking, well, maybe that's because you stuck him at first base for 2 years, right? So I'm like not freaking out about the Cronenworth thing. I'm just hoping he eventually can get back into a swing of things. But I genuinely am wondering if playing at first base, a position that I don't think he should have played, is a part of this. Last thing, though, the Bogarts double, and then Jackson Merrill single, and then bringing in Jackson Merrill on a hit for Martin Maldonado. I just want to give a shout out to Jackson Merrill running through the stop sign. This is a team that, with a speedy player like Merrill, there have been times watching this team when the runners are held up, and my thing is they have not been good as an offense this year, so I'm all for being a little bit more aggressive on the base paths in situations like that when you have a fast runner like Jackson Merrill or Tatis or somebody else, right? So that's just how I feel, but we'll have to see if they continue it later on, guys. But that is enough of the game recap. All right, now we got to talk about Gavin Sheets' slub, potential listener questions involved. It's going to be a fun time, guys. But first, a word from one of our sponsors. And that sponsor is our good friends over at the Duelists of Fandom, ladies and gentlemen. Well, not fandom, but dueling. The dueling fans. I'm messing up already, but let me tell you guys, what isn't a mistake is summer sports, which are in full swing. Baseball, basketball, soccer, golf. So I assume there's some tennis action going on. We've had some last week, so there must be. And FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. New daily promotions every single day. Keeps the app fresh. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. So what are you waiting for, guys? And if you're new to FanDuel, don't worry. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets back if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always. Let's talk a little bit in this second segment about Gavin Sheets, who has been in a little bit of a slump lately. All in all, on the year, he's been excellent, right? 255 batting average, 314 on base, 432 slugging, 111 WRC+. That is pretty good from a player that you got off the scrap heap. when you get an above average hitter off the scrap heap for basically nothing on some waiver claim type thing, that is amazing. That's how good organizations operate, right? It's very similar to what we saw last year with the Profar, Donovan Solano type of situation, except, well, don't get me wrong, this lineup has been worse than last year. Gavin Sheets has been great. However, he has been in a slump. On top of going 0 for 4 yesterday, over his last 15 games, I think it's worth discussing now. He's slashing 211 with a 274 on base and just a 281 slugging percentage. That's good for a 555 OPS, around a 65 WRC plus. He's been bad. And I think regression is, of course, possible in the second half, which is what a lot of people might be thinking. Like, was what we saw of Gavin Sheets in the first half before the All-Star break, was that, like, something that we should have been grateful for, but it's not going to keep up, right? And I'm of two opinions. Number one, his hard hit rate has gone down over these last 15 games, right? I'm putting it up on the YouTube, but his overall hard hit rate has taken a sizable decrease for a while now, towards the end of June, and then especially in July. Now, it's hopefully starting to creep back a little bit, but when you see the hard hit rate have such a spike downwards, so a decrease, I should say, whatever the extreme word for decline could be, not incline, so decline, maybe dropping into something. Into the basement, bottoming out. I don't know. There's got to be a more negative word to describe Gavin Sheets lately. But with that, that's part of it. And when you consider a player like Gavin Sheets, he's a guy that's selling out for power, right? Like, he's embracing launch angle. He's trying to turn and pull balls out. That's what he has been doing this year. And for a good reason. It has worked, right? Like, Gavin Sheets has been a very good player for this team. Let me be very clear about that. He's had some big time hits and big moments. And in general, the power, yes, it does come with a cost, but when you look at his pulled air ball percentage, 26.1%, that is elite, ladies and gentlemen. Like, he is pulling the ball, and that usually results in more home runs, and that's been great. But considering that he does chase a decent amount, and he does strike out a decent amount, and he is selling out for power, trying to, like, carry the ball a lot, he could go through some slumps. I'm hoping that the hard hit rate decline isn't something that's like, this is permanent now, he overperformed, but it is... his recent stretch isn't just like he's getting super unlucky, right? Like, he hasn't been playing amazingly. But if you're the Padres, I still think you should approach the deadline assuming what we've seen the majority of the season has been true, just so that just remember, like, someone who whiffs and chases and sells out for launch angle and power could go through some slumps. I'm hoping, but let me tell you, if we get to the end of this month, towards the trade deadline, and he's still producing like this, I'd be a little bit nervous. I would be. But in general, I think the Padres, like, we can't look at this as, all right, time to get someone different for Cease. They don't have enough ammo to be able to replace everybody there. But let me tell you, Tony Sue had some question over the weekend about Gavin Sheets. No, less of a question and more of a comment. And he says, and it's a long one, why no faith in Gavin Sheets' defense? Maybe he doesn't cover ground like an antelope like Tatis, but that only means he's typical of slugging outfielders. I haven't noticed him making mistakes in the outfield like bobbling balls, throwing to the wrong cutoff man, or the wrong base. Running into the outfield wall in his home park was a memorable event, but isn't typical of his overall play. Whoever is tutoring the outfielder for the Padres is doing an outstanding job. Jackson Merrill converted from shortstop to center field within days, maybe weeks. I'd say more like weeks. He used spring training. Tatis converted from shortstop to a platinum glove right field in his first season by playing the outfield like a shortstop, quick to get rid of the ball and sometimes executing a hard, accurate throw when his body isn't perfectly positioned, but that doesn't mean Tatis doesn't also try hard to get into position too. I agree. And he continues, and now Gavin Sheets, who I understand also had no experience in the outfield and played first base with the White Sox, he's playing left field well, and although doesn't have gifts to cover unusual ground, hasn't been making major mistakes and is being replaced in late innings only for coverage. Unless a player can be found with great range and can hit well, Sheets is a good solution in left field. And your criticism of Sheets hitting against lefties is probably unwarranted based on recent results. Given opportunities, Sheets has succeeded there too. This is a hardworking Padres club, and every player is showing the results of their work out of sight. So here's the thing. There's so much that I disagree with you there, and I swear, Tony Sue, I love when you make your comments, but I swear you just be commenting just to disagree with me. It takes 2 seconds to look up Gavin Sheets' numbers, right? Like, it's just not that deep. So let's start with one thing. When it comes to who's helping the transition to the outfield, it's an interesting point. I would say that overall, Jackson Merrill and Fernando Tatis Jr. being shortstops means that their transition to the outfield is better. We've seen this trend across not just the Padres, but all of the sport, which is that teams like drafting shortstops because they tend to be the best athletes. And the best athletes, if you have to, can convert to another position because they are so athletic, whether it be second base, whether it be third base, whether it be In the outfield, center field in the case of Merrill, and right field in the case of Tatis, it tends to work out well. With a player like Gavin Sheets, yeah, it's not expected that he's going to play good defense, but slugging outfielders, that is a little bit of a stereotype when you look at guys like Joey Gallo back in the day. I don't know why that's the first one I brought up, but Joey Gallo, Adolis Garcia of the Rangers is one of the better defenders in baseball. Aaron Judge is a great defender. It's not just slugging outfielders that struggle with their defense. And when it came to the second part of your comment with it's unwarranted, my criticism of Sheets hitting against lefties. Well, let's look at the numbers. Right? And in terms of the outfield play, by the way, before we get into that, in his career, before this year in the outfield, in 2024, he was good for -8 defensive run saves and -5 outs above average. Then in 2023 in the outfield, he was good for -4 defensive run saves and -2 outs above average. And then one more sample size, 2022, -8 outs above average. And I'm sorry, -8 defensive runs saved and -4 outs above average. So far this year, in left field, he hasn't been horrid, but he still is 0 defensive runs saved and -3 outs above average. That's not good. And while granted, it's not, maybe there's some hope he can be a little bit better in left field, I do agree with you. He hasn't made as many giant mistakes. A big reason for that is being in left field because he played more right field in Chicago. So that is a good point. Is he going to be a disaster in left field? No. I think that we can at least, not know, but we can hope that he's not a disaster there. But we do have precedent for him being a bad defender, as I just illustrated. And more importantly, we just know he's not going to be a plus, right? Like, I don't see a world in which he's a plus defender, or even just a plus above average defender. That I don't see. Bad enough that we have to really fix it, maybe we have a discussion there. And when it comes to his play against lefties, I don't really care about recent success, dude. You know what I mean? I care about it, but I'm not going to write off career trends. Against lefties this year, he has a 90 WRC plus, and against righties, a 120. Righties is good, 90 WRC plus against lefties. It's not horrible, though. Don't get me wrong. It's not horrible. That's why they keep him in the lineup more. I think they don't immediately bench him, but that still isn't great. And for his career, most importantly, we should expect that it could get, or expect or prepare for it getting worse. In his career, he has a 50 WRC plus against lefty, 50% worse than the average batter against lefties in Major League Baseball. So I don't know what you're talking about with that. It is absolutely warranted, and we'll see. And as evidenced by you not totally knowing that he played right field for the White Sox, I'm going to dismiss that. But in general, I think that Sheets, I'm hoping he can just be slightly below average in left field. I think the Padres are too, unless they do something at the deadline, which we are going to talk about on tomorrow's show. Actually, guys, today's show, we actually have one more listener question talking about Nick Pivetta and then the catcher situation. So we'll get to that in just a second, guys. But first, one more word from one more of our sponsors. And that one more sponsor is our good friends over at the phone that is often open, folks. Let me tell you about OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? Nope. You called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important, and that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. Did you juggle 2 phones to keep business and personal calls separate? Don't worry, OpenPhone solves that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more, who's handling this type of situations. And OpenPhone is offering our listeners, Locked On Padres listeners, 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonmlb. That's OpenPhone, OpenPhone.com/lockedonmlb. And if you have existing numbers with another service, don't worry, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls and no missed customers. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing, some would say. And this is the final segment of this show. Just talked about Sheets. Now, let's answer some questions from one Sir Ramamurti, who always writes into the show, and I didn't get a chance to answer in yesterday's mailbag. And he says, "Hi, Javier. Questions for your show. When is Nick Pivetta going to start getting consideration for the NL Cy Young Award? And here's another one. Which catcher would you rather trade for, Sean Murphy or Kyle Higashioka?" So first, let's start with Nick Pivetta. Let me be clear, y'all. I love Pivetta. I love Nasty Nick. Nasty Nick has been Obviously, the bullpen is, in my opinion, the best. I don't even know if it's an opinion. It's objectively speaking like the best thing I think for this Padres team this year. Just being obscenely good. They had a little bit of a rough stretch, right? I don't know if you guys remember. I think it was the middle of May. They started blowing a lot of games. We had the Suarez scare. Remember that Angels game, for example? Like some bad stuff. But overall, the bullpen is back and carrying this team. Nick Pivetta has been the second part of that, right? Because Nick Pivetta is a guy that you got for $2 million because you orchestrated this really crazy, weird contract to pay him a little bit this year and then a lot next year, and then there's some opt-outs after next year too. And he's easily, per salary reasoning, the best bargain in Major League Baseball, at least just for this season. And he's been excellent. Don't get me wrong. In ERA, he is. Let me see here. Let me see if I can find it. Nick Pivetta is 6 in ERA among all National League starters. That's really good, but I just said 6th. And while I do think Nick Pivetta, I think he could earn Cy Young votes. I do, but I don't see a world in which he actually wins it or is a potential candidate for it. For one thing, given that he gets hit so hard, it's possible that he will go up. Out of all the potential top line guys, his expected ERA is the highest, by far, at 3.77. Other guys, David Peterson, he's a little bit high, but you look at Freddie Peralta of the Brewers, just at 3.41. You look at Yoshinobu Yamamoto at just 2.91. Low-key been excellent this year, by the way, for the Dodgers. He's walking a little bit too many batters, but even still, 2.59 ERA. He's striking them out at a great rate. He's been excellent. Christopher Sanchez, the guy that actually should have made the All-Star team, 2.5. He's got good peripherals too. And then, I think most importantly, you've got some absolute stars, right? I think Yamamoto has the star edge, plus being a Dodger is going to get a lot more people paying attention to him, but it's also Zach Wheeler, who's been excellent this year. He hasn't won a Cy Young. You could see that kind of occur. He's got an excellent strikeout rate. I mean, this is just the guy's just putting up video game numbers. He currently has the best strikeout rate in the National League. That goes a long way for Cy Young, 33.4%. And then, as well as having the low ERA with the reputation with that Phillies team, then there's also Paul Skeens, who's got a 1.91 ERA. And while his strikeout rate isn't as insane as my guy there, right, he's still up there, number 6 in strikeout rate among National League All-Star starters. So, look, it's not going to be Pivetta, but let me tell you, there is an argument to be made that maybe he was robbed from the All-Star team. You could argue that, right? And I think that you could argue Christopher Sanchez as well. I just think that with those two guys, it's just absurd that we have to have certain players make the All-Star team. I think it's dumb, but whatever. Hey, I predicted that Nick Pivetta would be an All-Star. Instead, he pitched like an All-Star in the first half. Hopefully it continues up, but do not be surprised if by the end of the year he's rocking a 3.6 ERA, just because he can't get hit hard a lot. And that's not bad, by the way. Dylan Cease has a high ERA, and he was excellent last year, right? Or at least he can have a higher-ish ERA. We'll see if Cease has a good second half, by the way. And not to mention, you never know if Blake Snell gets back, that he just goes into a supernova, just gives up one run in the second half. So that's my thing. I just don't think he's one of the NL's best starters, but he very much has been so far, and I do think that he is a huge piece for this team. I don't think it's fluky. When I talk about regression, I'm talking about a nice, gentle regression, right? And hopefully the return of King, Darvish, and maybe a second half Cease will make up for any regression that he has. So I'm not being negative on him whatsoever. Nick, I love you. Next part of your question, though, Mr. Kyle Higashioka versus Sean Murphy. I don't think any of these guys are necessarily on the table for the Padres, and I'm not saying that that's what you meant. But let's look at Sean Murphy. He's got a hefty salary, right? That's the biggest thing with him, I would argue right now, right? He is making, let's see here. He signed a 6-year deal that runs out in 2028, average annual value of $12 million, and he's 30 years old, so not old, but he's a little bit up there, and he's carrying a 31% strikeout rate. So while he has been playing well, there's probably a little bit of regression expected, but he's a very good player. 2.4 wins above replacement. He's awesome in 64 games. He's great, right? I would love Sean Murphy. I would. But with the extra salary that he would carry, plus the extra prospect capital it would cost, I don't know if he's reliable. But if you're just talking in a vacuum, of course I'd rather have Sean Murphy. He's been much better than Kyle Higashioka, who, albeit, has had a nice recent surge lately. He hasn't been nearly as productive as Sean Murphy, or nearly as productive as last year. He's only got 0.2 wins above replacement. He's got an 85 WRC plus, right? He's starting to hit into a little bit more power, but he has not been that guy. But with the low salary of 6.75, right? It wouldn't be insane if they traded, like, not insane, it wouldn't cost too much to trade for Kyle Higashioka, and you probably would be an enormous upgrade over what they have now with Martin Maldonado and Elias Diaz. So in terms of like possibility, yeah, I'd take Higgy, right? In terms of who I'd rather have in a vacuum, it's Sean Murphy, but I just think Sean Murphy would cost too much. And also, by the way, Sean Murphy has been like awesome before, so he has some name value. He was bad last year, but he only played 17 games. He was hurt. He was a mess. He's bounced back this year. But before this, he had a 4.9 win season. He had a 5.2 win season. He had a 3.3 win season. And then he also had a 1.6 win season. In 20 games his rookie year, he had a 136 WRC plus. He is like a high value talent, and it would cost a lot to get him. Like, I genuinely think it would. Especially because you'd have some club control. I don't know if they can afford. I don't know what the Padres' exact, like, strategy financially is going to be. So $12 million over the next couple years, that could be an issue in terms of what would prevent a trade. And again, I just think that the prospect capital would cost a little bit too much for the Padres, given where they're at and given where they might want to be in the future. Just have some flexibility to sign free agents, to make other moves. And he's got a club option, by the way, for 2029. I was wrong. Yeah, he's got a lot of years left. I don't think Sean Murphy is going anywhere. And by the way, if you do want to trade for him, you're giving up Salas. Now, I will say I have been very against trading Leo DeVries and Ethan Salas. If you put together a package with Ethan Salas to get Sean Murphy, that would be less annoying because it would be a catcher, right? And you'd have control for years. So at least it's the position you've been dying to get for so long. He has some good defensive upside. He's been amazing before, and he's been better this year. I wouldn't hate that as much. Ethan Salas for other positions, I'm like, then what are we doing at catcher for the next forever? You know what I mean? It's not like there's catchers lying around everywhere. They're just not. But again, those are just my opinions, guys. And thank you, as always, for writing in with your questions and comments. I always love answering them. Usually I answer them all on Monday, but since we had so much to talk about from the weekend, we didn't. Keep feeling free to send them in. And in terms of the future of this show, let me tell you, tomorrow we're going to be talking about a bunch of different topics. I have to record ahead of time because I'm getting on a plane and I need to go to bed early. So we're going to do that, guys. We're going to be talking about Andrew Vaughn, right? And we're also going to be talking about two potential players for this Padres to trade for. Finally, Harrison Bader and Mr. Marcell Ozuna. Should be a lot of fun, and might have some episodes crossovers with more CBS 8 folks. I know I'm going to be visiting their studio. I don't know if it'll be an episode for Monday or next Tuesday or anything like that, but just so you know, that'll be what I'm doing. I might also go on some of their shows as well, so just stay tuned, follow along, and I'll let you know. But until that next time, everybody, thank you for tuning in, and until next time, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies, take care.